So today I'm going to talk about something that is not um, utterly surprising, or unique, or even really directly about app modernization. So everyone's who's been around public cloud has heard of the three most common as a service, right? Infrastructure as a service, which is the ability to host traditional compute and storage workloads in the cloud. Um, Platform as a service, as we described earlier in this series, is the ability to do all that without worrying so much about an operating system, and comes with various flavors and categories: database as a service, hosting applications in a platform as a service platform, which is frequently just called platform as a service. And then there's any number of other types, for example, container as a service, Kubernetes as a service, and then more advanced versions or more bleeding edge, even less compute to worry about than containers and Kubernetes is this notion of function as a service. Well, all of that ends with software as a service. I mean, the as a service model, candidly, was even more popular and has been popular longer in terms of collective terminology than some of these other terms. You could almost argue software as a service, the software as a service, birthed a lot of these more later used nods to software as a service. Well, what is software as a service? Really quick, for those who don't exactly have it clear in their brain. Historically, you would buy software, it would be licensed, you would install it on a server or a set of servers, and then you'd have your software. That was the old way, in a sense, prior to software as a service coming into vogue and being now very ubiquitous and popular. Well, software as a service has become an interesting way to modernize applications. Now, you might say, well, that's silly because that's somebody else's software as a service. That's correct. I mean, for example, you could hardly say that I'm going to modernize this app by moving it to software as a service. That makes very little sense, because if you already have a unique application and it isn't met by another product on the market, then yeah, you're probably not going to be able to just take it to a software as a service product like Salesforce or Dynamics 365 or HubSpot or any other software as a service product. I mention it because of what we'll talk about tomorrow. And that is that lots of software as a service products, several that I just mentioned, but also you have a whole host of other similar software as a service products, WordPress and WP Engine, for example, that allow more flexibility than you ever. We talked about this, by the way, with application platform as a service, APaaS, we said, where these platforms provide functionality and building blocks that may still invoke, I'll call it a low-ish code model, but they still come with a lot of functionality, a lot of code, a lot of modules and services that traditionally you would have had to have built from scratch. We'll talk about tomorrow. So much software as a service these days are being offered not just as a software solution, as an answer to what I said earlier, the traditional model of acquiring software and hosting yourself, but it's also a platform. Lots of software as a service these days have become a platform for further delivery of solutions. And so when you're considering app modernization, one of the things I would say is look at some of the most popular software as a service products. Again, I mentioned a couple earlier, Salesforce being one, certainly Dynamics 365 being another. I expect particularly when it's relevant to some of these APaaS products that they're built on, like a Azure Logic Apps or Power Platform. And so just realize that app modernization, particularly as we get further and further down the low-code, no-code paradigm, will look possibly less like what you would have traditionally thought. In other words, it's possible that to modernize your app, you should take it. However unintuitive the statement may be, you should take it to software as a service. Not that you'll necessarily get the full functionality of your custom unique app, but because of what we'll talk about tomorrow and because of what we talked about with application platform as a service, perhaps your next big app modernization move is actually to an existing piece of software in software as a service.